Got some news. Today I'm going to be responding to a news article that's circulating right now talking about the merger between AT&T and Discovery. All right, they're the ones who do Discovery Plus, but potentially Disney buying DC and its properties, reinvigorating the restore the Snyderverse fight. So we're going to talk about it all. Be sure to hit that sub button and click the bell so you don't miss as we cover your favorite movies and TV shows. Also hit the like button. Okay, so this is something that I've been talking about for a while, and it never really picked up a lot of traction. People didn't seem to like the idea. In this video, I'm going to explain once again why I think this would actually be a good thing. But getting into these articles, let's take a look. Because when I first saw this, I was like, there's no way Disney's not going to buy DC. I thought this was my own dream that I had been pushing on YouTube. Um, but now it seems that with this merger, everything is up in the air. So it has Warner being spun off apparently by AT&T. I don't know why they would get rid of this property because it's not just DC, it's all of Warner. So it's Harry Potter, it's all the HBO Max content AT&T would be losing. So according to We Got This Covered, Disney could end up buying DC as a result of the Warner Media merger. There's been a line of hopeful and some would say misplaced optimism that the upcoming merger between Warner Media and Discovery could result in the restoration and resurrection of the Snyderverse, because we all know where this is really going. Of course, we're talking about the potential $100 billion deal between two massive corporations where most of the major players involved don't even have a background in the feature film business. They're mainly talking about Discovery and AT&T. We already knew AT&T wasn't in the movie business, but Discovery isn't either. They're known for TLC and all that stuff, HGTV and that stuff. So that hasn't stopped them. That hasn't stopped speculation making the rounds that whoever takes charge will boot out the old regime and welcome back Zack Snyder. Um, Now, a report has divided into the ins and outs of the deal, and at this stage, it looks more likely that Disney could end up buying DC. How is this? I mean, this is insane. By the way, the chat is on, so feel free to hit me up in the chat down below. Let me make sure I have that on so that I can see you guys going. There we go. All right, I got the chat on. Guys, DC being bought by Disney would be the best thing. And let me explain why. Okay, so we want our characters to be preserved, taken care of, okay? We want the movies to be good. I know people say DC is darker than Marvel, and Marvel doesn't do a good job at going dark. They can do dark. We've seen the Daredevil TV show. Jessica Jones and that kind of stuff, Punisher and that stuff. It was dark. The aesthetic would have to change, but think about the amount of cash flow that Disney has, right? So they are not rushed by anyone. They can take as much time on whatever projects that they want. And I think that's exactly the kind of attention that DC needs, the kind of nurturing that DC needs. DC properties need to have the freedom to be expressed by Zack Snyder as he wishes. Looks like I gotta. Let me try and. Looks like I got a smudge on the camera. Here we go. Wiki, wiki, wiki. Yeah, that looks a little bit clearer. Anyway, so DC being bought by Warner would be the best outcome, in my opinion, and articles are starting to circle around. Now, again, I don't understand why AT&T would be getting rid of DC, and it would really be all of Warner. But if they were to do that, would Discovery be putting it up for sale? Who would actually, would they just be putting the whole Warner entity up for sale? I would figure that Discovery would want to get access and ownership of the DC properties. Discovery is all about content. AT&T, they got into the movie business and that kind of stuff. But that was never their go-to. Discovery has always been making, content in terms of TV stuff like the Science Channel, Discovery, HGTV, and TLC, and all those channels. But they really need a movie arm, and this would make them gigantic in the movie space, able to compete with the likes of Netflix and Disney Plus. But obviously, if the people over at Disney want to get their hands on the DC stuff, I don't think that AT&T or Discovery, maybe even combined, would be able to stave off a cash offer from Disney. This would be the ultimate outcome for every fanboy because we would have all the DC properties and the Marvel properties under one roof. Superman, Batman, and Spider Man, Wonder Woman, Hulk, Iron Man, all of them in one shared universe. Because we know that's where it would go. If Disney were to buy DC, that is absolutely where they would be headed, and that would be the reason for them even making the offer in the first place. So I'm absolutely down for this. I think Marvel would have to be very careful to make it distinct from Marvel. They'd have to be very careful to make DC distinct from Marvel in tone, in feel, in look, etc. It would all have to be different from Marvel. That would make the joining of them together eventually, maybe in a movie, that much more enjoyable. If they just give DC the Disney treatment, the Marvel treatment, then we're in the same situation. And people may say it would be worse. Actually, it wouldn't be because that's exactly what Warner was trying to do. They saw the success that Avengers had. They saw the success of those movies, and they had been trying to force DC into that mold ever since. You see a movie like Aquaman that could easily fit in the Marvel universe. Just saying. I'm not saying it was a bad movie, but it it wasn't very DC. In terms of just how dark they could get with it. And so I really think that Marvel has a golden opportunity to take their time. They have unlimited budget. They can hire whoever they want to take on these properties. And yes, Zack Snyder would definitely be at the top of the list. Marvel likes money. Disney likes money. Could you imagine the DC themed rides? Because you know they would be taking the rides as well. They would be trying to get into all that ownership. So look at Six Flags, which has the rights to use DC properties in themed rides and stuff like that. Disney would be coming after that as well to include the Justice League and other DC superheroes at Disney World. Which, guys, this would just be awesome. And I know there's conflict and there's people aren't really settled on whether they want this to happen, but just imagine it being as good as it could be. Imagine Zack Snyder being back at the helm with Disney, having the rights to the Snyderverse and all the DC properties. Imagine that. Isn't that a world that you would want? Isn't that a scenario that you would want? Because honestly, we can't get any worse right now. All right, we have Warner shoving the new DC down our throats as fans, and demonizing the fan base, saying that DC fans, there's like this bad element to restore the Snyderverse. It's like one of the most successful fan movements of all time, donating to more charities, doing more positive things, but it's just being trashed in the media, the Warner-owned media mostly, because of exactly that. Hit pieces coming out in Variety magazine, the Ann Sarnoff things we had heard about a couple months back. It's time to leave. Honestly, and unfortunately the fans don't have the ability to leave, okay, and take the DC properties with us. But I think that AT&T is going to wash their hands of Warner, okay, because of all the conflict, because of all the confusion, because of all the infighting. AT&T is going to wash their hands of the whole thing. They're going to do a partner with Discovery, and Discovery would put Warner up for sale. And at that point, I can't imagine a bigger buyer than Disney. It would probably be one of the worst business moves in the history of Disney if they didn't buy it. Even if they bought it and sat on it. I'm saying even if they weren't superhero fans, just from a business perspective, if you have the cash to buy Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, you do that. You just do. It's very rare, if ever, these things become available for sale. You're talking maybe once or twice a generation, and that all depends on the success of the franchises. Marvel absolutely wants or Disney. I have to be careful and remember to say Disney because it is not Marvel that would be buying them, because then that would be really confusing. Marvel owning DC. It would be Disney owning DC and Marvel. That's the kind of situation we'd be looking at. And so we have to split it. And again, Marvel will have to make it very distinct, but Disney would have to make it very distinct between DC and Marvel in tone, in feel, in all of those things, because they don't want to pee off the fans even more. with the Disney treatment being given to DC characters and stuff. So hit me up in the comments section down there. What do you guys think of something like this? I'll get back to the article because this is being floated around right now with this merger. It says, again, the report has divided into the ins and outs of the deal, and at this stage, it looks a lot more likely that Disney could end up buying DC than Justice League 2 or 3 happening, which would certainly be a shocking turn of events. But again, this article is saying one or the other. But obviously, if Disney were to buy DC, that would open up the door to restore the Snyderverse. The report goes on to say that billionaire businessman John Malone, the largest private landowner in the United States, who also holds a stake in Lionsgate and Starz, gave up his voting shares to push a merger through so that Warner Discovery, it's weird off the tongue. Warner Discovery had the flexibility to be sold in the future, with Disney, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix all named as potential suitors. So this is more than Disney. We'll break it down into who else could buy it and how that might benefit them. So obviously, in addition to Disney, so this is not just Warner, okay? This is Warner and Discovery possibly being bought by Disney. I don't know the interest that Disney would have in Discovery. I mean, maybe. I don't really care. Right now, it's about the Snyder cut. But that's also something to be aware of. Apple was named as a possible potential buyer of these properties. Now, Apple buying DC, I think, would actually be really a good move as well. And this is because, well, it's not good in terms of content like shared universes, because that's obviously Marvel. It's obviously Marvel, hands down. Having DC versus Marvel and all that stuff, plus DC Star Wars. Like, you just don't know. Like, anything could happen. If Apple were to buy them, though, Apple has done dark things in the past. If you guys watch Apple TV, I've covered some shows on this channel that Apple TV has done, like See with Jason Momoa, who was Aquaman. Who is Aquaman? That was really good, and it was really dark, and it reminded me of DC. In fact, a lot of Apple TV's content is dark. So they might be interested in something like DC Vertigo or DC as a whole. Warner, goodness gracious, Apple definitely has the cash. They would then own Harry Potter. They would own several other franchises, everything on HBO Max, basically. I don't know why I was about to say Tom and Jerry, but it was so connected with Justice League when it came out that I just, forgive me for that. Next up would be Amazon. Now, Amazon actually has a little bit of a connection with DC by means of The Boys. For those of you who don't know, The Boys was actually a DC comic property. And we remember DC is dark. That's how dark The Boys is. DC actually got rid of The Boys because it was too dark. The storylines and the things that were happening were too gruesome, even for DC, so they let them go. Now, we know Amazon has The Boys and those properties, so they're certainly not afraid of any dark DC content. It pales in comparison to what they can do on The Boys. So, if Amazon were to take DC and Warner Media, this would put them on the level of Disney at that point. I would think with their retail prowess. Gosh, could you imagine Amazon Land? Like, that would be insane. That's the only thing they would really be missing, though, is theme parks. But and they have a deal with like Six Flags and stuff like that. They're doing a lot of their rides. The DC rides, if you notice there with Six Flags, if Disney were to get it, you know that DC would also be going over to, DC characters would be going over to Disney World. But Amazon could definitely, they have the cash to do it. And then lastly, Netflix was named as a potential suitor for buying DC properties. This I don't really like. This is my least favorite. And it's because Netflix is so confused right now. I think DC, as good as the content is, some of the best content in the world, probably top two in my opinion, in terms of franchises, it would get drowned out. It would just get drowned out by the amount of content that Netflix is constantly shoving down their streaming service. It's insane. I mean, and it's not a problem with having a lot of properties, but when you have a situation where you're also doing the Avatar verse, and you're not really set on a direction, and you used to own some Marvel stuff, and now you're going for DC. I feel like Netflix would be the least passionate about the purchase. Netflix is so content hungry right now because they're competing with Disney Plus and stuff. They would just be getting DC and Warner to have the content, not because they loved the potential of what they could do with DC's characters. Because a purchase for Warner is obviously a purchase for DC. It's their biggest franchise, and anybody who would be buying it would know or want to have a plan of what to do with the Justice League and DC properties. And I don't think Netflix has the passion for that, as where Disney has a passion, obviously, with Marvel and Star Wars and those things. It'd be a wonderful universe for Warner and DC characters to play around in. Apple would be great as well, because Apple is dark and they've made dark content on Apple TV Plus, and Warner is just the kind of juggernaut in terms of media that they would want to then really take over. I mean, they could really Apple could really take over, because they would not only own a whole bunch of content from owning Warner, but they would also then begin to own. They already own like all the devices that you watch that content on, and so you'd be looking at a monopoly. I feel like if there's one company that might end up getting sued out of all this for a monopoly and stuff like that, it probably would be Apple. And then Amazon, obviously, with their connections to DC. I think they would have a passion for the content as well. However, would this make Amazon Prime? And I know a lot of people like Amazon Prime. I feel like Warner would just be a little bit too big for all of Amazon Prime, straight up. The amount of content they have on HBO Max alone, it's a lot, and I feel like it would overwhelm everything on Amazon Prime, which might be what they want to do. But I don't know. It would obviously be one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world. It already is, but it would just be probably top two at that point, next to Netflix. But yeah, let me know, guys. Hit me in the comments what you think of this. I had been pushing this. This was my pipe dream for the longest time. I am absolutely on board with Disney in particular buying DC, because right now we're already getting a company that's trying to force that Marvel type of. Sorry, it's so dark on this side of my face. We already have a company in Warner that's trying to force that light Disney Marvel-esque side to DC. So why not? And you know what it ends up being? A cheap knockoff. That's all that it is. If you're trying to rip Disney for DC, might as well just have them with Disney. At least they're going to do it right, and we might see. At least they'll do Disney and Marvel right, and they'll have more characters to play around with. But I don't think that would be the case. I think that if Disney and Marvel were to get, well, not Marvel, Disney were to get their hands on DC and its properties, I think they would do it justice. It's because of the amount of cash they have. Look how long it's taking them to do Fantastic Four. Look how long it's taking them to introduce the Fox, oh my gosh, they own Fox too. The X-Men characters. Look at how long it's taking them to implement them. Why is it? Because they want to do it right, okay? And they have all the time and all the cash in the world. So I would love that strategy to. I would love for that strategy to be implemented for DC's characters. They need that kind of money. They need that kind of time. You know, for artists like Zack Snyder to think about the characters and work on these storylines. Warner was rushing everything. They were just trying to have a Justice League, and put out these movies as quickly as Marvel was doing their thing. Kind of blow up and establish an entire world super quickly. And so it kind of fizzled out. Zack Snyder is a rock star right now, from Army of the Dead to obviously Snydercut and things like that. He's probably the biggest director in Hollywood right now in terms of name recognition, just because of the viral support that he's getting online. Something DC related, Snyder related, is trending pretty much every day. By the way, follow me on Twitter at Chris Grant Jr. We can keep the conversation going over there. I talk a lot of both things relating to both these channels, WeSibs and my other channel, Lada Quente Ledger, where I have my show, The Granted Geek Show, which is my tech show, which is why you're probably confused by a lot of the tech around here. Same set, so, but yeah, let me know what you think of this. I think this is an awesome idea, an awesome merger. Be sure to hit the sub button, click the bell so you don't miss, as we cover all your favorite movies and TV shows, and we're always taking suggestions down below. If you're looking for something pretty edgy, that's a superhero show to watch, check out The Nevers. They just had kind of their season finale, episode 6. I did that whole series, so check that out. I'll update the description once we get off the live stream, and also Jupiter's Legacy. I'm covering that too. So help grow the community, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm so excited for this. Keep that restore the Snyderverse energy up. Hashtag restore the Snyderverse. And yeah, I'm all for it. If Disney buys DC, that's going to be a good day for me, because I think they'll do it better than anybody else that I've seen try at this point. So yeah, thanks guys so much for watching. I will